Hey guys, Curtis here. In this video, first I'm going to give you some updates about me, and then I'm going to get into the topic of the video, which is consciousness calibration and how we could use it for political purposes to solve many of the problems in the world today. But first, some updates. Number one, I am hard at work on my new self help book about anxiety. I wrote a short ebook about anxiety in the past, which is available on Amazon.com, but I never really promoted it. I just kind of wrote it because I felt obligated to put something out there specifically for people who suffered from avoidant personality disorder so that they could find it if they were looking for something like that. But now I'm actually writing an updated book for anyone with any anxiety issue who is interested in using self help to get rid of anxiety. If you're the type of person that you're interested in psychological development or any type of real, like, do it yourself type of stuff, and you have anxiety issues, my book is just for you. In the last just couple of months, I've really discovered a lot of new stuff about how to get rid of anxiety as fast as possible. Sometimes it is possible to get rid of serious anxiety issues in a couple hours or less if you know exactly what you're doing, and I'm going to put all that information in my new book. My new book is probably more than halfway written by now. And so I'm gonna finish writing it, and then I gotta proofread it, and then I'm gonna hire a real editor just to make sure it's top notch, and then I gotta get a cover designer, and then I can publish it on Amazon. So probably in the next couple of months, it will be coming out on Amazon in paperback and ebook format. So look forward to that, and just stay subscribed to my YouTube channel, and I will make some videos about that when it comes out. My next update is you can hire me for personal consulting. I have two topics I would like to do consulting about that I'm available for, that I'm probably an expert on. I guess you can call me an expert on them. The first one is anxiety issues. If you have specific anxiety problems that you would like to work on with me, I am willing to do that in a one-on-one phone call, Zoom call, whatever call. Um, you can email me if you're interested, and I'll put my email in the description of this video for personal consulting, and we will be using my best methods for getting rid of anxiety to see if we can get rid of your anxiety issues. I have only worked with one client in the past for anxiety issues, and we did successfully resolve one of his anxiety issues. But since this is still kind of experimental for me, I will just go ahead and say, if I'm not able to help you, you will get a refund at the end of your session, or maybe if, like, the next day your anxiety is still bugging you and hasn't gone away yet. Sometimes they can kind of, even in when you relieve your anxiety, sometimes there's this issue where you're not really sure if it's gone. So maybe I'll give you some kind of, like, 1 week period where you can say, like, okay, did this session really help me? Is my problem really gone? Kind of test it out. But I will give some kind of very solid money back guarantee for anyone that works with me for anxiety issues. Second topic I will do consulting about is consciousness calibrations. If you need me to do consciousness calibrations for you, I can do that, and you can send me an email about what kind of needs you have. And of course, with that, you always, the people doing it always need to ask permission. So I can just ask permission. Do I have permission to do that for you? And if so, I can work with you. And with that, there's no money back guarantee because it's kind of like, it's not scientific per se. It's more of a spiritual experience type of faith-based thing, and so I don't really want the type of person who's going to be arguing with me about my results, because ultimately, it's not even my opinion. It's just like, okay, the muscle test says this is the number, or this is the result. However, some of it is my intuition will guide me in the process if you need help making certain decisions or something like that with consciousness calibration. But anyways, I'm available for any of those ideas, anxiety issues or consciousness calibrations. to work with you personally. Send me an email about that. So that is my update. Now on to the topic of this video, which is what can we use consciousness calibration for in the world, specifically political topics. I'm going to talk about some hot topics in the world today, well, sort of, geopolitical problems that I have used consciousness calibration to figure out what would be potential solutions for problems in the world today. And, if I was personal consultant to the President of the United States, what would I tell him to do based on my consciousness calibration results? So I focused on geopolitical stuff for this video, and these are some ideas that have been running through my head the last couple weeks, and I just felt like talking about it with you guys because why not? I don't have anyone else in my life, in my personal life, to talk about consciousness calibration with, except for one or two people that I know kind of on Facebook that I message with sometimes about it, but that's about it. But first topic, the war in Russia and Ukraine. So before I tell you my findings, the way you can predict how to get a geopolitical result that you want is that you cannot predict the future with consciousness calibration. You cannot say definitively what will happen, but you can predict you can ask based on current conditions of the universe, what is likely to happen if I do XYZ. So, for example, you can ask, if I flip a quarter, what is likely to happen? Maybe there's like a 99% chance it'll be heads or tails, and like a 0.001% chance it'll land on its side. So you can actually ask, if the President of the United States launched a missile at Russia, how would Russia probably respond? And you can actually get like a percentage, and these percentage responses they kind of change over time. I remember, for example, before the 2020 election, I remember calibrating who is likely to win, and at one point it was like 55% Trump, and then it kind of flipped to Biden, and it went kind of back and forth, so it was very neck and neck. So you can't always get definitive answers like, oh, I know exactly who's going to win, because things can change over time. But right now in the world, I can ask with consciousness calibration, and anyone who does it can ask, how could we end the conflict in Russia and Ukraine? And my result there, basically using my intuition and then testing my intuition ideas with calibration, it says that if the President of the United States were to get together with the NATO countries and put a significant number of basically long-range missiles and artillery and things like that in the NATO countries, basically lining up missiles and pointing them at Russia big time, and then tell Putin, like, we are going to screw you up if you don't get out of Ukraine. Just that threat alone, my calibration says it would actually cause him to run away and get out of Ukraine. And here is an interesting fact that my calibration result has said, which is that Russia does not have any nuclear weapon that is capable of hitting the United States. Now, I don't know if that's because they've lied about their nuclear capabilities over the years. That's probably part of it. I don't know if it's because their nuclear missiles have fallen into disrepair. That's probably part of it. Some people have said, members of their military have even sold off parts of missiles and things like that, so they're not even working. But basically, my calibration says that there is not a single nuclear weapon that Russia owns that can hit the United States. Part of that may be because the United States has the capability to shoot it down, which it certainly does, because we've just been developing all sorts of stuff with shooting down, because we were in the Cold War for so long, we had to develop defensive capabilities. So Russia is actually not a nuclear threat to the United States. They are a nuclear threat to much of Europe. They do have nukes that can hit many European countries, But regardless, my calibration says that if Joe Biden were to put a lot of missiles into the NATO countries and right next to Russia and point them right at Russia and say, back off, Putin, get out of Ukraine, or we're going to blow you up, or we're going to screw you up, Putin would 100% leave Ukraine. And the war would be basically over. They might have like border skirmishes, but the war would be over. So that is interesting, and that would probably save thousands and thousands of lives, because as the war is right now, it's going to drag on and drag on and drag on. And right now, my calibration actually says that Ukraine is likely to win the war over time and get back all of their territory. That is the likely option of how the war is going to end based on all of the factors right now. And that is largely because of all of the NATO weaponry support and stuff like that. The interesting thing I get with my calibration is that even if NATO had never given weapons to Ukraine recently, Russia would still not have been likely to conquer the whole country. So apparently the Russian military really is far less competent than people feared that it was over the years. And that might be because of corruption. It might be because of, in the Russian autocratic regime, they promote the people that support the politicians. They don't promote based on merit. And so the whole military is probably filled up with people that are kind of incompetent and, corrupt and all that stuff. So anyways, if I was advisor to Joe Biden, I would say, hey, go put a bunch of missiles in the NATO countries and point them right at Putin and tell him straight to his face, we're going to blow you up if you don't leave Ukraine. And he would run away. Next up, this is actually a crazy one. Based on my calibrations, if a president of the United States, whether Biden or maybe the next one, if they wanted to get North Korea to surrender unconditionally, they could do that based on my understanding of probability of what would likely happen if certain scenarios happen. So once again, if I was advisor to the president and using spiritual techniques instead of traditional political knowledge, basically you get to bypass all of the questions of what will happen, and you can just test with your little muscle tests, which I do. I'm trying to show this. You just do the muscle test with your finger, and you test true and false, and you can find out what is true and what is false. And my calibration result says that if a president of the United States threatened Kim Jong-un and said, I am going to personally blow you up with a missile unless you surrender unconditionally, that threat alone would have roughly a 50 to 60% chance of working and getting him to surrender. If you just said, listen, I don't care if you hurt South Korea, I don't care if you declare war on me, I'm going to blow you up, because the United States has capabilities like that. But if you want to get the probability to 100% that he will surrender, there's actually a way to do that, at least based on the conditions in the world right now. And that is if the United States president and the president of China both said to Kim Jong-un, you must surrender to the United States right now or we will blow you up. If China made the same threat, my calibration says the chance that Kim Jong-un would personally surrender unconditionally to the United States is 100%. So basically, I don't want to say I'm predicting the future, but it says 100%. That's what my result says. Now, why would the president of China ever want his ally Kim Jong-un to surrender? Well, you can ask with calibration, how do we get that to happen? And my calibration says that China does not actually value the country of North Korea that very much. And what they value much more is their own self-interest. And so my calibration says that if you can convince the president of China that it is in his best interest to threaten Kim Jong-un with the United States, he would do so. And the way you do that, this is a really ballsy move. You go to the president of China and you say, I want to threaten Kim Jong Un with I'm going to kill him unless he surrenders, and I want you to do it with me. And if you do not threaten him with me, I will sign an executive order. Remember, this is the position of the United States president. I will sign an executive order immediately ending all trade between the United States and China. If that happened, tens of millions of Chinese jobs would instantaneously be destroyed. The entire Chinese economy would plummet into depression, and there would be chaos throughout China, and their economy would never recover. It would take like 100+ years to recover the growth that they would miss out on from not being able to trade with the United States whatsoever. And my calibration result predicts that based on current world factors, if the president of the United States made that threat to China, saying, you have to threaten Kim Jong-un with me or I will end all trade between the United States and China, the president of China would comply, because that would make it in his best interest to comply, because trade between North Korea and China is not very valuable compared to trade between China and the United States. My prediction is, based on calibration, is that the Chinese president would not try to call the bluff, and the North Korean president would not try to call the bluff. So you would not actually have to launch a missile and kill Kim Jong-un to get North Korea to surrender. He would just fold. So a United States president, if he wanted to, all by himself, without even using Congress for help, he could get North Korea to surrender unconditionally. And then you would probably want to give North Korea to South Korea and let them reunify or something like that. Now, interestingly, I asked with calibration, would that be a good idea to do that? And it actually said no. It said it would be better to leave North Korea alone because on their current path, they are likely to... I didn't really investigate this a lot, but it was like they're likely to collapse or reunify eventually with South Korea, even if the United States doesn't get involved. So I don't know what's up with that, but the calibration basically said it would probably be better for the world overall to not actually get North Korea to surrender with a threat like that. I didn't investigate it a lot, but I found that very interesting. Let's see. Here's another one I found fascinating. I was asking what would be good ideas to actually do. You know, if you can predict what countries will surrender, what countries will do what would be a good idea to do? And here's a crazy idea, which is that you could, if you're the president of the United States, you could actually convince China to set Tibet free with the proper strategy. And this is an idea that came to me. I was like, what would be good ideas for the president to do? If not to get North Korea to surrender, what would be a good idea? And actually, the calibration said getting China to set Tibet free would be a good idea because the people of Tibet still do not want to be part of China. And it would be better if they were independent. And so I said, okay, how the hell do you do that? That sounds pretty crazy, right? And my calibration result predicted that there is one strategy that would be the best strategy for doing that, and it involves the trade idea that I just said, plus an extra factor. So if the president of the United States said to China, I am going to sign an executive order ending all trade between the United States and China if you do not free Tibet, that alone would not do it. But who is China scared of? Interestingly, my calibration result says China is more worried about India than they are about the United States, because India is in the region and they have a 1 billion+ population, and they are basically very close foes with China. So my calibration result says that if the president of the United States made the trade threat to the president of China and he said, you must free Tibet or I will give long-range nuclear missiles to India that can hit anywhere in China. I will do this. I will end the trade between the United States and China, and I will give nuclear weapons to India. I believe they already have some nuclear weapons, but the United States actually has better nuclear weapons. If the United States, I said, I will give nuclear weapons to India that can hit anywhere in China, and that are more advanced than what you can defend against, my calibration result predicts that 100% chance China would actually agree to give up their claim on the Tibet lands and set Tibet free. And it also said that would actually be a good idea for the world, unlike the North Korea thing. I think North Korea is actually on a path to reunify with South Korea on its own. I think the country is kind of, the people are sort of getting tired of the autocracy there. And frankly, they kind of see their South Korean counterparts doing so much better than them, and they probably wonder, like, hey, why can't we have that? That's kind of my intuition. I haven't calibrated that, but that's my intuition. So it's probably better for them, the people of North Korea, if they earn their freedom rather than having a foreign country like the United States sort of come in and get it for them, because then they won't appreciate it as much. Or maybe they won't earn it karmically or something like that. I don't know. So another thing that my calibration said was, if the president of the United States wanted to get China to recognize Taiwan's independence, they could do that. But it also said that is not a good idea, because right now China is not planning on invading Taiwan. They are just sort of trying to slowly creep up their influence over Taiwan peacefully. And so it actually said it's a bad idea for the president to try to get China to give Taiwan, recognize their independence. I mean, they're already basically independent. But if the president wanted to mess with China and get them to recognize Taiwan's independence, once again, I believe all they would have to do is threaten China by saying, we will give long-range nuclear weapons to several countries around China, like Japan and South Korea and India and maybe some other countries, and basically say to China, listen, if you will not recognize Taiwan's independence, we're going to arm all of your nearby geopolitical foes with super nukes that can hit anywhere in China. And China would get very scared of that, and they would say, okay, we'll back off of Taiwan, we'll recognize their independence. But once again, my calibration says that is a bad idea, that we don't need to worry about China invading Taiwan, at least not right now, or something like that. It just said it's a bad idea to do that. So that is what I have so far. And also, another thing that my calibration said would be a good idea would be for the United States to get involved between Israel and Iran and get them to sign a peace treaty. I did not investigate that topic because I don't know very much about that, and I could have spent some time calibrating different options and finding how that would be possible and what threats, the United States would have to make against Iran to make that happen. But basically, my calibration said that could happen. There could be a peace treaty between Israel and Iran that would help stabilize the Middle East and, set the course for those countries and the world a little bit more towards peace, and that would actually be a good idea. I didn't investigate how that would happen. And also, my calibration said that if the United States wanted to force Iran to surrender, they could actually do that somehow as well. There's like a reasonable option. Sometimes I ask with calibration, is something possible? And the answer is no. So, for example, I asked with calibration, would it be possible for the United States to get the government of China to surrender and basically step down as the government and, let a democracy take over or something like that? And basically the answer is no, unless you completely wage a war against them and blow them up and stuff. And, I was looking for peaceful ways. How do we just make a threat and get them to comply? And it said they are not going to do that at all. 0% chance. So some things, it seems, are a 0% chance unless there is some sort of miracle. And so what do I mean by that? It means a miracle is basically when the universe changes because of the power of God, which can change the current conditions of the world and make new things possible that were not possible before. So what I'm talking about so far with all these geopolitical ideas is what is actually possible based on the conditions of the world right now. Right now, the United States president could get North Korea to surrender unconditionally. Right now, they could get Russia to back out of Ukraine if they followed my advice. Um, they could not get the government of China to step down and set up a democracy in China instead of autocracy without like nuking China and waging war, and that would not be a good idea for the world. War is almost always a terrible idea for the world. So that is some stuff that I've investigated lately, and it just gives you an idea of what type of knowledge you can investigate with calibration. And I've been talking about geopolitical strategy, but you can investigate strategy in your business. You can investigate strategy in your life, in your career. You can say, is this education a good path for me? What's the likelihood that it will make me happy? What's the likelihood it will make me money? What's the likelihood, anything. You can investigate any strategic options and calibrate them and find out what is a viable pathway. So that's what I've been up to lately. That is all my notes that I had to talk about in this video. I find politics very fascinating. There's different topics that you can investigate with domestic issues. I don't know if I should start a Trump versus Biden war, but I will talk about, I just realized I did do some calibrations a few weeks back with domestic politics. My calibration result says that there was a lot of illegal behavior in the 2020 election, but based on the legitimate votes alone, Biden did actually win the election. I wouldn't call it fairly because the media is so dishonest that if the media were honest, Biden would have never won. In fact, Trump wouldn't have won either. They would have to have different platforms basically to win if the whole media was honest. But that's really a problem of human ignorance. The media lies and voters are dumb enough to believe the lying media. So you can't really just say like that's cheating because the media is always lying. So that's my calibration result. It said that Biden did in fact win, even though there were several states that violated election laws by doing stuff like not signature checking on the mail-in ballots and things like that. Same thing with Kari Lake losing in Arizona. My calibration result says that Maricopa County is violating various election laws, but that she actually did legitimately lose based on the real vote count as well. So, ultimately, I think the best path forward would be states need to tighten up their elections and make it so that there's more transparency and more security so that these type of challenges don't have any possibility of being correct, because there is actually vulnerabilities in the election system. If people got together and wanted to rig elections, they probably could do it if they knew where to hit the vulnerabilities. So those should be tightened up. And we need transparency. I think a lot of these states that have kind of stonewalled the investigations, what they've done is they've broken election laws for one reason or another, and they don't want anyone to discover that they broke election laws by like not checking the signatures on mail-in ballots. That's a big law that has been broken in a few states. Just based on what I've seen and my calibration. I haven't fully investigated a lot of stuff because I just wasn't that interested in it. But I think there's some legitimate complaints, and then there's also a lot of fiction going around. There's a lot of Republicans complaining. They think every election they lose is because it was rigged against them, and it's not true. And one of my calibration results also says that Kari Lake lost in Arizona because she talked too much about the stolen 2020 election instead of talking about stuff that people of Arizona care about. Because it turns out that swing voters just they do not really care about this claim that Trump's election was stolen from him. You have to talk about stuff that the swing voters care about. And you can throw in a little bit of, we're going to have good election security to appeal to the more extreme Republicans who really think the election was stolen, but you have to get swing voters to vote for you, and she just didn't do that. I just mentioned her because I've seen it in the news a lot lately. You know, she had some kind of lawsuit that just failed, and she's appealing it, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere because my calibration before her lawsuit just failed. It said there's no chance that it will succeed, and she failed. um, on other topics, domestic politics, there's the whole border invasion thing with the illegal immigrants. My calibration basically says that it's not, a lot of Republican extremists are kind of saying, like, oh, this is the end of our country, we're being invaded, blah, blah, blah. My calibration says it's not something big that we should worry about, but it is something that we should have border security and stop illegal immigration because overall it's not good for America. And our immigration system, actually, the legal system needs to be improved as well because the legal immigration system is not set up well and in a positive, constructive manner for America. And you can ask about strategy of how could a Republican win, how could a Democrat win, and something interesting that I was using my intuition plus calibrating my intuitive ideas, and I was asking how can Republicans get Joe Biden to secure the border and actually stop illegal immigrants. And I asked about this idea of the governors of Texas and Florida have been busing illegal immigrants to liberal cities and states, and it's caused a big fuss in the media because the Democrats don't want the illegal aliens in their city. They're saying, oh, don't bring them here. We don't want to have to pay for them. It's like, well, you called yourself a sanctuary city, but now when they actually show up, you don't want them. And the funny thing is, many Democrats support illegal immigration out of ignorance. They think that the United States has unlimited resources to take care of them all, when really we don't, because if we just open the borders up, tens of millions of people would come here, and many of them would be poor and homeless and starving. And ultimately, you'd end up with just an enormous number of people that would be asking for us to take care of them, and we wouldn't have the resources to. And so Democrats need to be made aware that we do not have the resources to do that. And I just saw a story in the news that said homeless shelters in America are filling up with illegal immigrants. Instead of homeless Americans, it's homeless illegal immigrants who don't even belong in our country. The federal law says that Biden's supposed to kick them out and not let them in, and he's not following the law. And I asked with calibration, what would Republicans have to do to get, while Joe Biden's still in office, because he might not win, re-election, what would they have to do to get him to actually secure the border and deport illegal aliens? And my calibration said the easiest way for Republicans to do that would be two things. Number one, if about 15 Republican-leaning states would all do these two actions, it would put enough pressure on Biden to secure the border and deport illegals. And the first action is if they issue an arrest warrant for the head of DHS, the Mayorkas guy or whatever, and if they would all simultaneously declare this man is violating the Constitution of the United States. The Constitution says the federal government must defend the states against foreign invasion. If 15 or more Republican-led states issued an arrest warrant for this man, and they all simultaneously said, we are being invaded by foreign citizens, and we demand that this man be arrested because he's violating the Constitution, and the 15 states all started busing illegal immigrants from their states to liberal cities and liberal states such as California and New York, my calibration result says that that would put enough pressure on the Biden administration that they would change course and decide to secure the border. So it's a drastic action to issue an arrest warrant for a member of Biden's cabinet, but it is true that he's violating the Constitution of the United States because it says that Joe Biden must defend the states by defend them from invasion. And Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, my home state, he recently declared that Texas is being invaded. And, ultimately, every state has the right to declare when they are being invaded. There's no authority in the in the Constitution for the federal government to say, no, you don't get to decide that. So, by the power of the Ninth and 10th Amendments, the states have the power to decide when they are being invaded. And if they wanted to, they could actually take more drastic action. They could say, we're being invaded. Now we're going to pass a law that says we have the power to detain illegal immigrants as long as we want, and we can ship them to liberal cities and liberal states if we want to, and Biden can't stop us. And I think that like I said, if 15 or more Republican-leaning states, they all took action together like that, it would win on that issue. That's just one issue facing America. It is a serious issue. It is kind of annoying. I mean, I live in Texas, and it's kind of annoying when there's so many Hispanic people that don't speak English here, and most of them are illegals. And it's like, I go to Walmart and I talk to a person working at Walmart. I ask them where something is. They don't even speak English. It's like, how did you get a job in America? And there's so many of them. There's so many Spanish speakers in America that now illegal aliens can come here and they don't even have to learn English. They can meet up with other Spanish speakers and get jobs and stuff. And like I said a while ago, my calibration indicates it's not the end of America. We're not falling apart because we have illegal immigrants. But it would be good for America to end illegal immigration. And if Republicans knew what they were doing, if they had calibration to help them out, they could get Biden to do that. So that is literally all of the politics I've investigated lately. Sometimes, there will be random stories. A great thing to do with calibration, if you can calibrate, is just when you see a news headline, just test whether or not it's true. A lot of the news lately, a lot of the news always is a lie, or it's deliberately misleading, or it's accidentally misleading. I actually think it's deliberately misleading more often than it's accidentally misleading. But that's what I've been up to lately. Excuse me. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I'm working on my book about treating anxiety. It'll be out probably in a couple months. I'm open for consulting, and I hope I didn't offend too many people with my political statements. I don't think I actually gave that many political opinions. I think I was just reporting the results of my calibrations anyways. But I hope somebody found it interesting, and you can leave a comment and I will read them, and I will see you next time.